The land of Egypt is one of many contrasts with the iconic pyramids and temples spread along the Nile River, which cuts a green swathe between sandy deserts which encroach to within a few kilometres of its banks. All of these features have played a significant part in the history of this country. Abraham, Joseph, Moses and Jesus also left their marks on this country. Whilst the Egyptians worshipped many man-made gods, they also believed in an afterlife. The pyramids, the last remaining wonders of the ancient world, is a testimony to this. These pyramids are the tombs of Cheops, Khafre and Mankuri. Together with the Sphinx, form the major archaeological site near the city of Cairo. The ancient Egyptians were very religious and even believed in life after death. But they had many gods on a national scale, and each district or nome had their own local god which they worshipped. This graphic shows the major gods of the ancient Egypt. As we journey up the Nile, we will see many temples erected to these gods. According to answers in Genesis, the Egyptians are descended from Noah's son Ham. The pharaoh that Abraham came in contact with was most probably Khufu, the builder of one of these great pyramids. It is thought that Abraham, who was from Mesopotamia, brought a detailed knowledge of mathematics with which enabled the Egyptians to more accurately align and build their pyramids. The stepped pyramid at Saqqara was built by Zoser, the pharaoh who identifies the worship of the sun god with the worship of the king, and assumed the role and power of the priest and god. During his reign, about 2770 BC, Imhotep was appointed vizier over Egypt and is credited with the design and construction of the pyramids. He was also supposed to have saved Egypt from 7 years of famine and plenty. There is only one entrance to this complex at Saqqara through this mortuary building. The niches on either side, we were told, were places where statues of gods were placed. But it is more likely to have been a place for a clerk to sit to collect money for grain. Some 779 years after Imhotep, Joseph may well have used these same silos when he was vizier of Egypt, after he interpreted Pharaoh Sesostris' dream to mean that there would be 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of famine. At this time, Joseph's family, about 70 people, were brought to live in an area in the east of the Nile Delta, the land of Goshen. They would remain there for over 400 years, but mostly in slavery, until Moses led them out to meet God at Mount Sinai, or Mount Horeb, in Midian, which is in Arabia, and finally to the Promised Land in Palestine. After leaving the stepped pyramid of Zover, we stopped to see this colossal statue of Ramses II. It once stood in front of the Temple of Ptah and is 13 metres tall. A close-up of his headdress can be seen, and also his name in the cartouche on his belt. Although he is on his back, his hood and his hands are not crossed upon his chest. Outside the enclosure are to be seen a sphinx, an upright statue of Ramses, a sarcophagus and a stele. Our next stop was the Muhammad Ali Mosque in the citadel outside Cairo. This was built in 1830 and has a beautiful courtyard and fountain outside. Inside, the dome is 52 metres high and is illuminated by many hanging chandeliers. Tourists were not the only ones present in these as these worshippers were performing their devotions. Both modern and ancient methods of transport can be seen as we travel to the Temple of Karnak. An avenue of sphinxes leads up to the pylons at the entrance of Karnak, which is dedicated to the god Amun, but there are several other temples to Osiris, Ptah, Khonsu, Mintu and Mut. Since the pharaoh of the time was also regarded as the incarnation of the god, they also added to the complex during their time of rule. Inside the first pylon, we are in the court of the temple of Ramses III, where there is a colonnade of Osirid pillars with a pharaoh in his jubilee vestments. Up against one pylon is the shrine of Seti II, with chapels of Amon, Mut and Khonsu. In the temple of Ramses III is this huge statue of Pinjujem, the high priest of Amon, and the pharaoh Tinata of the 21st dynasty between his feet. As we move further into the temple of Karnak, we encounter the massive hypostyle wall of 134 columns, etched with hieroglyphics and paintings. Amenophis III began this around 1375 BC. The most prominent obelisk is that of Hatshepsut, and we will see her mortuary and temple later. This obelisk has the cartouche of Amenophis III.
That's an important or a difficult job. Speak here about like what, 500 tons or maybe more than that. Let's have a sand map trying to imagine how they did that. If we said
the giant scarab was dedicated by the pharaoh to the god Khepri. In this sacred lake, the priests bathed 4 times per day. Karnak was originally reached by boat from the Nile, but since the Nile no longer floods, this canal and dock is dry. We board our boat on the Nile and set sail for the temple of Luxor. There are many feluccas on the Nile and we sail on one later. Our boat boasts an upper deck with a swimming pool. Below that is the dining and entertainment area, and below that again are the cabins in which we will spend the next few nights. The entrance to Luxor is by an avenue of sphinxes, guarded by 2 colossal statues of Ramses II. The temple at Luxor was once covered by sand, and this mosque was built on top of the temple, only to be exposed when the temple was finally excavated. Luxor's temple was built near the city of Thebes, the ancient capital of Egypt. It was commenced by Amenophis III, added to by Thutmose III, and completed by Ramses II. It was finally destroyed by Ashurbanipal in 672 BC and later by the Ptolemies in 84 BC. Then the advancing desert sands covered the ruins. The god Horus, Aten and Ammon-Ra seem to have been mostly worshipped here.
look at these features and then turn around and look at these features.
In the early Christian era, the Coptic Christians used the ruins of this temple for worship and painted pictures of the apostles on the walls.
We can see like some faces. Okay? For the first time we see
The word Copt comes from the Greek Aegyptos, meaning Egyptian.
the real beard, not the false beard, is when we notice the color of the paintings. It's vegetable paintings, not science, like what we
Back on the Nile, a cruise boat, it is easy to see the narrow, fertile strip with the desert mountains behind as another cruise boat passes.
Normally the people they say, the son of the god, the son of the god. 22 years for Queen.
Our next stop was Deir el-Bahari, the temple of Queen Hatshepsut. The temple was originally dedicated to the goddess Hathor, who is represented in some of the reliefs as a cow. It also contains a solar temple to the god Harakdi, and also a chapel dedicated to Thutmose I, Hatshepsut's father. The area was originally a necropolis, and tombs can be seen tunnelled into the surrounding cliffs.
Sent to Somalia. But actually at the corners, like this corner here, we see a shrine for god Anubis. Anubis, the jackal-headed god, or the god of mummification. It is said that the mummification of the queen should take place in this shrine just right here next to us. Hatshepsut really, she wanted to please the different gods. Let's be more clearer. Hatshepsut wanted to please the priests of the gods, wanted to gain them next to her side. Because we need to remember all the time the two powers, the palace and the temple. Here, the figure of course of Hatshepsut have been at the ceiling. Here you can see the blue ceiling, and he knew very well about this vulture and about this bird. From the most beautiful, I say, these three vultures and the falcon at the corner over there. Okay? If you look up close for long.
Restoration work is being carried out both inside and outside the temple. Hatshepsut is reported to be the Queen of Sheba, who visited Solomon in Israel. Her temple is supposedly modelled on Solomon's temple. Looking from the entrance of Hatshepsut's temple across the Nile to the temple of Karnak. The paths to the entrance of both temples are in exact alignment, and to the right is the ruins of the temple to Thutmose III. At the beginning of the ramp to the temple is an image of Horus. The terraces were supposedly a copy of those leading up to the temple in Israel, originally planted with exotic trees including frankincense and myrrh. We join the bus to the next point of interest, the Colossi of Memnon. These colossal statues once guarded the entrance to the vast necropolis of Amenophis III, which was built at the beginning of the 14th century BC and destroyed by an earthquake in 27 BC. The statues were cracked from shoulder to thigh, and at sunrise the statues began singing. An attempt was made to repair them, and this stopped their singing. Our bus ride to a papyrus factory took us past some of the dwellings of the farmers who till the narrow, fertile strip of land beside the Nile. We attended a demonstration of papyrus making, and I will leave the expert to tell you what is happening.
I got here late. What is the plant?
Plant.
Oh,
Yeah, papyrus.
how big does it grow?
It grows near the Nile River.
Quite tall?
Yeah. Okay, and the wooden pin. And now we can make from this a paper. It's very flexible, you see? And very strong. Then after that, we'll put them into the water for 6 days. And after 6 days, they would bring 2 pieces of leather. But we have leather, we have material. We'll arrange them between the material in horizontal and vertical lines. Yeah.
However did they find us out? They were desperate.
Okay. Then they will put it under heavy rocks. We haven't also heavy rocks. We have the hand press. We'll put it under the hand press also for 6 days. And after 6 days into the water and 6 days under the hand press, we'll get like this white paper. It's the first paper in the history of the mankind. Okay, and here we can see horizontal and vertical lines. Okay, and you have probably noticed a difference color between two pictures. This one is darker than this one, and you can ask why this one is darker than this one. The reason why this one is darker than this one is that this one was left 6 days more into the water. For example, 12 or 15 days. Okay, 12 days into the water and 12 days under the hand press. So we get this one is darker than this one. Okay, and now I want to show you something else. And you have probably noticed in small bazaars, usually in Cairo, the prices are very cheap. In fact, they are not real paper. They are made out of banana leaves. Okay. Now I will show you how you can distinguish them, the difference between them. If we'll flex the real paper like this, you see, nothing happens to it. But if we'll flex the false paper, they will be cracked down and they will be damaged. But the real paper, nothing happens to it. As the main ways that you can distinguish by that way, if we'll dip the real paper like this, okay, and after drying it, you can write, paint on it, whatever you want. After drying it, you can use it as a paper again. You see, nothing happens to it. But if we'll dip the false paper, the lines will be separated. Why? Because the lines, they stick together with a chemical glue. But the papyrus plant, they contain a natural glue. Okay? And now I want to explain for you this picture. It's called it's a final judgment, or it's the court in the underworld. When a person has died, he was taken to underworld, where his deeds were taken to the court of the Osiris. Before coming to this place, the dead man was facing with a 14-member of jury. Okay, and 7 of these gods, we can see 7 of them, they keep the key of the life on. It means that they believe him. But 7 of these gods, they don't have the key of the life. It means that they still don't believe him. So that keeps balance. Okay. Then the god of mummification, Anubis, takes him to scale, to the scale, and the heart of the dead man will be put on the scale with the feather of the justice. Okay, and if the heart will be heavier than the feather, it means that this person was bad, so he will be thrown to the hell and his soul will be restless forever. And this, the horrible beast with the head of crocodile will eat his heart. But if the feather will be heavier than the heart, it means that this person was good. So the god of protection, God Horus, will take him to the Osiris, and he will be granted to the place in paradise. And we can see here taught the god of writing. He was writing the result here. Okay, what happens here? And at the end, I want to explain.
Back on board our boat, we continue up the Nile to our next destination. These enterprising salesmen were selling Galabrias, and we bought one. Our next stop was at the temple of Edfu. This temple was dedicated to the god Horus, represented by a statue of a falcon in black granite.
The temple was used after that till 30 BC. From other side, without thinking, here.
Abdu explains the meaning of many of the hieroglyphics.
Hieroglyphic can be read right to left, left to right. What do you think? Which way shall we read this line? Sometimes as well top to bottom. Top to bottom, that's easy. But what about this line? Which way shall we read it? Back. Remember, the temple is built from the back to the front. So this side of the temple, they wrote that way. The other side, it will be the other way around. Okay? Start one symbol and one sound. That's one symbol, and it's one sound. But some symbols, this is her, H-R. Okay, so it's two sounds in one symbol. Sometimes we have three sounds in one symbol. For example, this. That's three sounds in one symbol. And that's how we got. This is one symbol and it's one word. It is D, like D-I. This is verb to give. Okay? When we look next to the verb, we find the red crown of Lower Egypt, which is pronounced N, like the letter N. But it resembles for the past tense. So DN, which means gave. And this viper, we said we pronounce it F. So D and F. F is suffix, third person masculine. He, which means he gave. We have suffixes, we have verbs, we have tenses, we have preposition, we have subjects, we have datives. Yes, it's very complicated. The boat of Hathor. Hathor, the wife of Horus, the deity who was worshipped in this temple. Hathor, she was the goddess of. She was a cow. She was the goddess of.
Don't talk about her like that. Oh yeah.
تتكلم على ماليش دعوه انا ما بتكلمش عن حد لا ماليش في السياسه انا تقول لي العمود جواه ايه ناس تقول لي الرئيس راح فين لا يا عم ماليش دعوه ordered to build a temple for her son Horus. But the king, he doesn't know where to build the temple. He doesn't know where is the holy land of Horus. And that's why, by the way, that's Horus behind his mother. As we're moving on forward, we can see the king here is coming to this goddess Sishat. If you're coming, he is showing the king where is the holy land of Horus, where he should build the temple. So now he knows the land, and he's coming here to prepare the land before building the temple. The king is holding a jar, pouring something on the ground. Somebody will come and ask, what's that? What's he doing right here? It's like drops. Somebody said maybe water, like as if he's purifying the land, but we have never seen the water. We proceed forward, please, to allow the others to have space. We have never seen the Egyptian or the ancient Egyptian representing the water as drops. Maybe seeds, could be. Actually, even when we read down here, we don't know. It doesn't tell us exactly what's happening. It reminds me, personally, with something I see around here. When they have a new building, they put some salt and a piece of bread. And I asked several times, why do you do that? And I haven't got an answer. To have a good building. So what's the story? What's the relation of good building here? We just have to step forward, please. So, that could be salt. And by the way, the salt, it was one of the ways of purifying. The purification way. So these are the bricks I'm building your temple with. Horus is very happy, and that's why he is hugging the king. And moving on with the scenes. Yes, you can see the band something.
You still see the staff?
Isis. She is happy because the king built the temple. And here, the king, he finished the temple. He finished building the temple here. The king with one hand is holding the key of the temple to present it to Horus. With the other hand, he is burning the incense around the temple. Okay? He's doing that, presenting the temple to the king, so he can have the sign of the stability. This sign, this stick ended with the head of an animal, that's the sign of the stability. Notice the two signs on the columns all around. Stability. You can see the sacred boat of goddess Hathor. You remember the boat of Hathor coming to... So here at this place, this is the sacred boat of Hathor, on the other side the sacred boat of Horus. She is meeting her husband here at this point. And he will take her inside the sanctuary to have them end. The golden statue was supposed to be here in this shrine. And of course, we didn't find the golden statue. The shrine, which is made out of very fine granite, it's actually, we don't find a lot, this granite. But we have a problem when we look at this shrine and we read the name on it. This name is King Neqtanebbu II. He is the sanctuary. The king is knocking on the door, asking for the permission to get in. When he got the permission, we can see he is opening the door of the sanctuary. Okay? And then he's inside the sanctuary praying to Horus, burning the incense, making the libation to Horus and his wife Hathor. The one behind Horus here, that's his wife Hathor.
One evening, a dance was held and the passengers dressed up in the traditional costumes with music provided by Nubian entertainers. The temple at Komobo, like many of the temples, was originally built more than 1,000 years earlier. It has been rebuilt and enlarged, lastly, by the Ptolemies. A calendar of important dates for worship festivals was also recorded on the walls of the temple. Our guide explains the calendar of religious events engraved on the walls.
Can you all see that? Actually, the first pillar is very important, so I hope you can all see it. If you want to squeeze in, so you can all see the first pillar we're talking about right now. The first pillar, we can see the sun disk. Sun disk, it means day. And then the date or the number is written next to it. So we can see 1-2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The dash is number 1. The whole show is number 10. So this is 6, 10, and 10. Day 26 of this month, which we don't know. The top is broken now. So far we don't know. So day 26 of this month, they should have that service and that service. Day 26, 27, 28, 29 is different, and 30 is different. 30 is like the tail of the animal, the end of the animal. That's the end of the month. If we look at the next day, it is day 1. It's the beginning of a month. But look with me. You'll find the plants are complete, which means it's the harvest season. But which month of the harvest season? The moon will tell us. We can see the moon and then 3 dashes, which means harvest.
We have already seen that the Egyptians worshipped many gods. The Komobo temple was dedicated to 2 gods. The left part is dedicated to the falcon god Horus, the elder, personification of the sun. Statues of the gods could be made to talk by the priest sitting in a cave below this grill and speaking the oracles of the god to the worshippers. Mummification gave the priests a detailed knowledge of the human anatomy, and they developed an array of surgical instruments recorded here on the walls of the temple.
For weighing the chemicals of the medicine. If you look at the 3rd register, the first 2 instruments like 2 hooks. When we have an operation, we have to fix it, to fix a cut. We're using something not very far from that. If you look at the 4th register, by the way, there is a towel clip in the middle of the 3rd register. A towel clip. If you look at the top register, anybody can guess what's the top register? What is that? Look in the middle, you can see a drill. The question is, did they have that? Yes, they had that. But what did they do? Were you awake? No, of course not. So they had anesthetic? Right here. That's what's written right here. Okay. This was a very advanced science in the ancient Egyptian temple.
The temple of Komobo was only a few metres from the Nile and was one of the places where the level of the water could be measured, a most important requirement to determine when the Nile was about to flood. The device is called a nilometer. The right side of the temple is dedicated to the crocodile god Sobek, a primordial divinity to whom the creation of the world is attributed. This is in stark contrast to the biblical account of creation by the one true God, Elohim. They were worshipping the creature rather than the creator. The plagues brought on the Egyptians by God through Moses were directed specifically against some of their gods to demonstrate their powerlessness compared to the true God's power. Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt in about 1445 BC when Amenhotep II was pharaoh and whose son died during the final plague. Here in this quarry, stones were cut out from the bedrock to produce the statues or obelisks for the temples. The original Aswan Dam was constructed in 1902 to control the annual flooding of the Nile, but it also caused some important temples to be potentially inundated.
When we go there, we will look.
The temple of Philae was originally flooded for all but 2 months of the year, and when the high dam was built it would have been permanently submerged. This necessitated its relocation to its current position above the new water level.
Actually, it's a shrine dedicated to goddess Hathor.
Philae was particularly sacred to the ancient Egyptians, as it was the place of eternal sleep for the goddess Osiris, the bride of the god Isis.
Yes, they do it like this.
Beauty. They were in love together, and then they decided to get married. And right here,
It also houses a temple to another god, Hathor. Over the years, other structures were added right up to the time of the Ptolemies and reflected the influence of Egyptian, Greek and Romans who occupied the land at various points in its history. This changed Philae from being a once-a-year pilgrimage site to one used more frequently.
I have to say that the Romans, they were different from the Greek and the Egyptian at this point. The Egyptian and the Greek, if the king died without finishing the building, the next one will go on. Then the next one will continue, and so on. The Romans.
Philae is an example of a temple complex being moved and raised because of the building of the Aswan High Dam. On our boat, a Nubian group provided entertainment for us. Abu Simbel is in the heart of Nubian territory, almost on the border of Sudan, some 300 kilometres from Aswan. Constructed by Ramses II, it is a temple dedicated to Ammon-Ra, Ha-Makais and Ptah. This temple was also relocated to avoid flooding from the construction of the Aswan High Dam. These walls depict the military prowess of Ramses II at the Battle of Kadesh. 65 metres from the entrance is a room 7 metres by 4, in which are the statues of the deified Ramses, Ptah, Ammon-Ra and Ha-Makais. This room is so precisely aligned that twice a year, at the equinoxes, light illuminates all of the statues except Ptah, who is the god of darkness. Beside the Ramses structure is the temple of Hathor, dedicated to Ramses' wife Nefertari. It was very unusual for the pharaoh to construct such an elaborate monument to his wife. The flight from Abu Simbel back to Aswan gives an indication of the vastness of the Aswan High Dam and also of the desert beside it. The first cataract of the Nile in ancient times was as far as boats could navigate, and the provision of locks has enabled boats to travel much further upstream. Sailing on a felaka was quite entertaining, and for some, not without its problems. Not to mention the young children fearlessly paddling in between the large sailing boats. Elephant Island and Sahil Islands are here. Sahil Island has granite blocks carved with hieroglyphics which mention Sosa and Imhotep saving Egypt from famine. Imhotep was not Joseph. Joseph was the vizier of Egypt about 700 years later under Amenemhat III, 1662 BC. Aswan is also where Egypt finishes and Nubia begins. Its mild climate makes it a pleasant place to spend the winter, and there are many hotels to cater for the tourists. We are riding in a horse and carriage to have high tea at the Old Cataract Hotel. Aswan's Old Cataract Hotel is one of the original hotels overlooking the first cataract, where the elites would gather in the evening for high tea and G&Ts. The Cairo Museum contains the artefacts and relics which have survived the tomb looters. Recently, a large new museum has been built near the pyramid complex, and all the exhibits have been relocated to this larger site. This is a wooden statue of Ka-Apa, chief lector priest from Memphis. Note his eyes. And here we have a black diorite statue of Khafre with the falcon god Horus perched on his shoulders.
The artist who made this is the genius artist. I think so, personally. This man, he had a tomb for themselves. The two statues
Rahotep was the director of expeditions and the high priest. He and his wife Nofret were from Maydem, near the pyramid of Snefru.
Mustache. Very few statues we can see here with a mustache. The real hair to prove that not all the Egyptian men had to be completely shaved, but the priests had to be 100% shaved. The art that the wife is lighter in color. A princess represented with her hair wet, but the representation of her real hair can be seen underneath. Her name, Nofret means the beauty. Look at this couple, and let's look at another couple here.
The Egyptians were keen to show the diversity of family life, and here we have the dwarf Seneb and family from the 6th dynasty.
Two kinds of dwarfs. You know a dwarf? We had two kinds. That's what they say. They say that we had dwarf.
Tutankhamun was buried inside 3 sarcophagi. This is his third or outer sarcophagus. He was the child of Thutmose III and Hatshepsut. Akhenaten was a pharaoh of the 18th dynasty, and Nefertiti was his wife. He attempted to change the religion of Egypt from polytheism to monotheism, but without success. He wanted to worship the sun god Ra only. Here is the outer sarcophagus of Tutankhamun. He was enclosed in 3. This is the middle sarcophagus, and Tutankhamun's funeral mask was one of the most ornate found. And here is the inner sarcophagus of Tutankhamun. The canopic jars containing the vital organs of the deceased pharaoh were contained in this box, guarded by the goddesses Isis and Selket. Here is Anubis, one of the pantheon of Egyptian gods. Here is a royal bed. It doesn't look very comfortable. A throne of gold-plated wood is inlaid with semi-precious stones and shows a picture of the queen Ankhesemenum anointing her husband. This is very unusual. The name of a god was not allowed to be touched.
His enemies are under his feet. I hope that we have all seen this. This way.
This statue or royal car of Tutankhamun represents the pharaoh's double, which leaves the body at the moment of death to follow him into the afterworld. Here are a number of chariots of different designs used for royal parades and for warfare. They are similar to those used to chase the Israelites when they were led out of Egypt by Moses and were destroyed in the Red Sea. History tells us that after this, the pharaoh was unable to carry out any extensive military operations due to the loss of his whole army and all of his chariots in the Red Sea. And here we must leave our visit to Egypt